Have you ever made a promise to yourself and then broken it just days later? You swore you'd wake up earlier, hit the gym, start that new project, stop procrastinating, and for a moment it felt like this time was different. But then, life happened. You hit snooze one too many times, skipped the gym, lost momentum, and just like that, another goal slipped through your fingers. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. This is the silent battle we all face, not against the world, but against ourselves. The truth is, motivation fades. It lies. It's a spark, not a flame. What truly sets people apart, the ones who actually do what they say, is something much rarer: discipline. But what is discipline really? And more importantly, how do we develop it in a world built on distractions and instant gratification? In this video, we'll dive into the timeless wisdom of one of history's most disciplined warriors, Miyamoto Musashi, a samurai who never lost a duel. A strategist, a philosopher, a man who lived with purpose, mastery, and honor, guided not by emotion, but by unwavering principle. His life holds answers that modern self-help can't touch. So if you're ready to break the cycle and finally follow through, not just once, but consistently, stay with me. This might change the way you see discipline forever. Let's be honest. We're not living in a world that encourages discipline. We're living in a world of instant everything. Instant messages, instant likes, instant food, instant entertainment. We've trained our brains, without even realizing it, to crave quick hits of satisfaction. And that brings us to one of the biggest enemies of discipline today: dopamine. Now, dopamine isn't evil. It's a natural chemical in our brain that rewards us when we do something good, like eating when we're hungry, drinking water when we're thirsty, or finishing a hard task. It was designed to help us survive, thrive, and feel good about progress. But here's the catch. Our brains haven't evolved fast enough to handle modern technology. So now, instead of getting dopamine from meaningful effort, we get it from scrolling, binging, checking, clicking, buying, and avoiding. It's called instant gratification, the pleasure we get without the pain, without the process. Think about it. Why spend hours working on something hard when you can feel good instantly with just a tap on your phone? Why write a book when you can read 50 quotes on Instagram that make you feel wise for a second? Why exercise when you can watch a motivational video and get the emotional high without the sweat? The problem is, every time we choose the shortcut, we weaken the muscle of discipline. We teach our brain that effort is optional and pleasure is the only goal. Over time, this rewires how we experience life. The things that actually help us grow, like learning a new skill, starting a business, reading a difficult book, or sticking to a morning routine, they become boring, unrewarding, pointless, because our brain isn't used to waiting anymore. That's why most people give up after the first few days of trying something new. Not because they're lazy, not because they're stupid, but because their brains are addicted to easy. And discipline is the opposite of easy. Discipline is about choosing what you need over what you want. It's about training your mind to say, no, I'm not scrolling right now. I'm building something. It's waking up when you don't feel like it. It's pushing through when the results aren't instant. It's showing up over and over again, even when no one's watching. Now here's the truth no one likes to hear. Discipline feels uncomfortable. At first it feels wrong. It goes against the programming we've been fed for years. But the more you practice it, the more your brain starts to adapt. Eventually, the thing that once felt hard starts to feel right. You begin to take pride in the effort. You begin to feel alive again. And that is the beginning of mastery. That's what Miyamoto Musashi understood centuries ago. Without smartphones, without apps, without dopamine science, he knew that greatness requires sacrifice, not once, not twice, but daily. He knew the enemy wasn't out there. It was within. Let's talk about something we all fall for, and maybe you're going through it right now. Motivation. That sudden surge of energy when you're excited about a new goal, You buy the gear, you set your alarm, you make a fresh to-do list, you feel unstoppable. But then, a few days go by. That excitement, gone. That early morning energy, now it feels like a chore. And the to-do list, still sitting there, untouched. Sound familiar? That's because motivation is a trap. It tricks you into thinking it's sustainable. But it's not. Motivation is emotional. It's fleeting. It's dependent on your mood, your sleep, your environment, even the weather. And when it disappears, which it always does, you're left with nothing. Unless you've built something stronger. Discipline. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't wait for inspiration. It just shows up. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people never achieve their goals, not because they're not capable, but because they build their actions around how they feel, instead of what they've committed to. Let's say you want to get in shape. You start going to the gym. First week, you're killing it. But then one day, you're tired. It's raining. You had a long day at work, so you skip it. No big deal, right? But the next day you feel the same. And then it happens again. Suddenly, the gym is something you used to go to, not because it was too hard, but because your motivation ran out and you didn't have a system to take over. And that's the key word here, system. Discipline is a system. It's built through small, repeatable actions. Done even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. It's brushing your teeth, not because you're inspired, but because it's who you are. It's sitting down to work, not because you're hyped, but because that's what you do. Miyamoto Musashi understood this better than most. He didn't win 60-plus duels because he was motivated. He wasn't the best because he felt like training. He trained whether it rained or snowed, whether he was tired or sore. Because his standard wasn't built on emotions, it was built on commitment. That's why he became a legend. Not because he had more talent, but because he had more consistency. So ask yourself this. What do you want badly enough to keep showing up for? Are you building a lifestyle or just chasing a feeling? Do your actions match your goals or just your moods? If you want to rise above average, you need to stop relying on motivation. You need to build systems that support your identity, systems powered by discipline, not desire. And the best part, the more you choose discipline, the stronger it gets. It becomes who you are, and you stop needing motivation altogether. That's when things start to change. That's when you stop starting over. That's when you become unstoppable. Now that we've talked about how discipline outlasts motivation, let's bring it to life. Let's talk about someone who didn't just talk about discipline. He lived it. His name was Miyamoto Musashi. And his story isn't just history. It's a blueprint for what's possible when discipline becomes a way of life. Musashi was born in 1584 during a time of war and chaos in Japan. By the age of 13, he had already fought and won his first duel. Think about that for a second. While most of us were still figuring out how to survive high school, this guy was surviving by the sword. But here's what makes Musashi extraordinary. It wasn't just that he fought over 60 duels and never lost. It was how he prepared, how he trained, how he lived. He didn't chase glory, he didn't fight for fame. He trained relentlessly because he believed mastery required total dedication. He wasn't trying to be good, he was trying to be unshakable. Musashi would travel across Japan with almost nothing. No luxuries, no distractions. He slept outdoors, studied his opponents, refined his sword technique constantly, not because someone made him, but because he chose that path. That's discipline. It's saying, I'm going to do what needs to be done, whether I feel like it or not, whether someone's watching or not, whether there's applause or silence. And what's powerful about Musashi is that his discipline wasn't limited to the battlefield. He was also a philosopher, an artist, a writer. His book, The Book of Five Rings, isn't just about swordsmanship. It's about strategy, mindset, and the inner game of life. Here's one of my favorite quotes from him. You may abandon your body, but you must preserve your honor. Let that sink in. To Musashi, honor, doing what is right and living by principle was more important than comfort, safety, even life itself. He believed that true strength came not from muscle, but from mastery of self. And that's something we all have access to. You don't have to be a samurai to live with that kind of discipline. You just have to decide, what do I want badly enough to sacrifice for it? What am I willing to do daily? Not because it's fun, but because it matters. Musashi didn't have Instagram. He didn't need motivational quotes or productivity hacks. He had clarity, he had purpose. And he backed it up with discipline, day in, day out. That's what made him dangerous. That's what made him unstoppable. And guess what? You don't need to win sword fights to apply that in your life. You just need to show up for yourself with the same mindset. One action, one choice, one disciplined moment at a time. That's the way of Musashi, and maybe it could be your way too. Alright, now that we've explored the why behind discipline through Musashi's story, let's get practical. It's time to dive into the 7 core principles of discipline, drawn from the way Miyamoto Musashi lived, trained, and thought. These aren't just ideas from the 1600s. They're timeless strategies that can transform your focus, your habits, and your entire life. Starting today. Principle 1. Reject desire. This one might sound extreme. Reject desire. Isn't desire what motivates us to do things in the first place? Here's the catch. Not all desires are created equal. Musashi believed that the constant pursuit of pleasure weakens the mind. He saw desire, especially desire for comfort, indulgence, and distraction, as a trap. And honestly, look around. How many of us are chained to desire without even realizing it? We crave sugar, validation, quick results, entertainment. We reach for our phones without thinking. We binge-watch shows when we're stressed. We avoid difficult work because it's uncomfortable. And we chase easy pleasures because they feel better right now. But here's what Musashi understood. If your happiness depends on always feeling good, you'll never become strong. Rejecting desire doesn't mean becoming a monk or denying every joy in life. It means training yourself to pause, question, and choose long-term growth over short-term reward. Let's bring this down to earth with an example. Imagine you're trying to build a business. You know you need to spend your evenings learning skills, making calls, refining your offer, but it's been a long day, you're tired. Netflix is one click away, and your brain whispers, come on, just one episode, you deserve it. Now pause. In that moment, you're at a crossroads. One path feeds your desire for comfort. The other feeds your vision for who you want to become. If you give in to desire too often, your discipline erodes. But if you consistently choose discomfort over distraction, even just 51% of the time, you start building strength that compounds. Musashi trained his brain to associate pleasure not with indulgence, but with effort. He felt good after practice, after discipline, after mastery. So here's how you can apply Principle 1 today. Next time you feel that urge for a quick fix, pause for 5 seconds. Ask yourself, is this helping me become who I want to be? If the answer is no, smile and choose the harder path anyway. Not because it's fun, but because that's who you are now. You're no longer someone who's ruled by every impulse. You're someone who acts with intention. And that shift, tiny as it seems, is what separates the average from the disciplined. Musashi wasn't born with more willpower. He just made one hard decision at a time, over and over again, until it became who he was. You can do the same, and it starts right here by saying no to the easy and yes to the effort. Now let's move on to the next one. Principle 2. Focus on one thing at a time. If there's one discipline killer that's become more dangerous than ever in today's world, it's this: trying to do everything at once. We live in an age of multitasking. You're working on a project, but also checking your messages, listening to a podcast, scrolling Instagram, replying to an email, all at the same time. And then we wonder why we feel scattered, why nothing really sticks, Why we're always busy but rarely fulfilled. Here's the truth. Multitasking is a lie. It makes us feel productive, but it actually drains our focus and kills our momentum. And Miyamoto Musashi, he knew this long before smartphones existed. Musashi believed that mastering one thing with full presence would open the door to mastering many things. He chose the sword, and he gave it everything, every movement, every breath, every day. He once said, "If you know the way broadly, you will see it in all things." In other words, deep mastery of one path teaches you about every path. But the problem today is this. We start something and then jump to something else before we finish. We chase skills, businesses, passions, but the moment it gets boring or hard, we move on. The result? We become dabblers, jacks of all trades, but masters of none. So, how do we apply this principle? Start by choosing one thing that truly matters to you and give it your full attention. That doesn't mean you never do anything else. It means you stop scattering your energy across a dozen things and start going deep instead of wide. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to become a great writer. It sounds simple, but your mind says, wait, maybe I should also start a podcast and a YouTube channel and post daily on LinkedIn, and maybe I'll try coaching too. But here's what happens when you try to grow all those things at once. None of them grow. Instead, what if you said, for the next 6 months I will write every single day, without exception. My energy goes here. Now your focus has weight. Now you're building something. And the results? They start stacking. Because here's the magic of discipline through focus. When you go deep on one thing, you gain confidence, clarity, and momentum. Then you can expand from strength, not from chaos. Musashi didn't just pick up a sword casually, he gave it everything. And that focus created ripple effects that made him not only a great warrior, but a great artist, a calligrapher, a strategist, and a philosopher. So ask yourself, what's the one thing you keep saying you'll commit to? What would change if you gave it your undivided attention, for real? Discipline isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters, and doing it with all of you. That's principle number 2. Focus on one thing at a time. Master it, and watch how the rest of your life begins to align. Now we move to something that sounds simple, but is incredibly rare in practice. Principle 3. Never abandon your path. This is where most people fail. Not because they aren't smart enough, not because they don't have talent, but because they give up too soon. Let's be real, starting something is easy. You're excited. Everything feels fresh and full of possibility. But staying the course, that's a whole different game. And that's where Musashi's mindset becomes gold. He didn't just start his journey to be a great swordsman and hope for the best. He made a vow to himself and to the path that he would never stop, no matter what. He had doubts, he had fears, but quitting was never an option. And here's why this matters for you today. We live in a world obsessed with speed. If you don't see results in 7 days, you feel like a failure. If your video doesn't go viral, you question your value. If your business doesn't blow up in 6 months, to pivot, but the path to anything great is not a straight line. It's messy, it's frustrating, it's full of invisible progress. Musashi understood this. He knew that mastery takes time, and the only way to see the results is to keep walking the path. So how do you apply this? Start by choosing a path that's worth the struggle. Don't just chase trends or copy someone else's dream. Pick a path that aligns with your values, your vision, your why. Then, commit fully. Let me give you an example. Say you're trying to build a healthy body. You start working out. You clean up your diet. You're on fire for the first 2 weeks. But then the scale doesn't move, you feel sore, you miss one workout, and your brain says, maybe this just isn't for me. That's the turning point. The moment when most people quit. But if you stay, if you show up the next day anyway, that's discipline in action, that's you refusing to abandon your path. And over time, those little moments of staying in the game add up. They build momentum, they build identity, and eventually they build the result. Musashi didn't become unbeatable overnight. He won because he stayed, he kept training, kept learning, kept refining. And so can you. Whatever your path is, writing, fitness, entrepreneurship, parenting, music, healing, faith, stay with it. Don't let a slow start fool you. Don't let a setback define you. Don't let self-doubt make your decisions for you. The secret isn't speed. The secret is staying. And if you can do that, if you can keep going when it would be easier to quit, you're already ahead of 95% of people. So write this one down. I will not abandon my path. That's what Musashi lived by. And if you take it seriously, it will change your life. Welcome back. You're now at Principle 4, Build Discipline Through Repetition. By this point, you already know discipline isn't just about willpower. It's not about feeling strong all the time or forcing yourself through pain. It's about something deeper, something more sustainable. It's about turning your actions into habits. This is where most people go wrong. They think discipline means waking up every single day and battling themselves, like it's a constant war of should I or shouldn't I. But here's the truth. The most disciplined people don't fight that battle every day. Why? Because they've already made the decision once and then they repeat it until it becomes who they are. Musashi understood this perfectly. He didn't train with a sword once in a while when he felt like it. He didn't wait for inspiration. He made repetition a way of life because he knew that what you repeat, you become. Let me give you a modern example. Say you want to become a better reader, someone who actually finishes books, not just buys them. If you try to read for an hour every Sunday, you'll forget half of what you read by the next week. But if you read just 10 pages a day, every day, no exceptions, that small act becomes part of your routine. It becomes effortless. It becomes identity. You go from someone trying to read to a reader, not because you told yourself you are, but because you proved it through repetition. It's the same with fitness. It's not the guy who crushes it at the gym once a month who gets results. It's the one who shows up, even when it's just a light workout 5 days a week. It's not dramatic. It's consistent. Musashi didn't just train when there was an upcoming duel. He practiced every stance, every swing, every breath, over and over again. He wasn't preparing for a single fight. He was preparing for a lifetime of mastery. That's the kind of mindset that builds real discipline. So how can you apply this right now? Pick one small action that aligns with who you want to become. Not a big, flashy goal. Just something consistent. 10 push-ups a day. 15 minutes of focused work before checking your phone. Writing one paragraph. Meditating for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be repeated. Because repetition doesn't just build discipline. It builds belief. Every time you follow through, even in a small way, you're telling yourself, this is who I am now. And when that identity locks in, things get easier. Not because the work is easier, but because it's no longer a debate. You just do it, like brushing your teeth, like tying your shoes. It's part of you now. So if you want to become disciplined, don't chase intensity, chase consistency, show up, repeat, become. That's how Musashi trained, that's how legacies are built, and that's how you become the kind of person who finishes what they start, every single time. Now we've come to something that might sound old-fashioned, and old-fashioned in today's world is more powerful than ever. Principle 5. Live with honor. Honor. It's not a word we hear much these days, but for Miyamoto Musashi, it was everything. In fact, it was the foundation of his discipline. To Musashi, honor wasn't just about reputation. It wasn't about impressing others. It was about self-respect. Living in a way that you could look yourself in the mirror and say, I did what was right. I held my line. I didn't take the easy way out. Now let's translate that into today's world. Because let's be honest, we live in a time where shortcuts are everywhere. You can fake results on social media. You can buy followers, cheat systems, lie on your resume, even avoid hard conversations with a carefully crafted excuse. And guess what? Most of the time, no one will call you out. But you'll know. And that's the point. Honor is doing what's right, even when no one is watching. It's choosing integrity when no one would blame you for quitting. It's following through on your word, not because it's convenient, but because you said you would. Here's a practical example. Let's say you're running a business and a client overpays you by mistake. No one notices. It would be easy to keep the money, tell yourself it's a bonus, and move on. But deep down, that decision chips away at something. Because every time you compromise your values, even a little, you weaken your sense of identity. And when your identity cracks, your discipline follows. Because how can you stay disciplined if you don't even trust yourself? Honor and discipline go hand in hand. Think about it like this. If you respect yourself, you won't break your promises, not to others, and especially not to yourself. You won't keep hitting snooze if you promised yourself you'd wake up at 6. You won't skip the gym if you said you'd show up. You won't make excuses because you live by principle, not preference. That's the power of honor. Musashi lived by the Bushido code, the way of the warrior, which included loyalty, courage, honesty, respect, and most of all, honor. For him, life wasn't about being comfortable. It was about being worthy of his path, his purpose, and his own self-respect. And you don't need a sword or a samurai code to live this way. Just ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be when no one's watching? Do I cut corners when it's easy, or do I rise to my own standards? Do I walk my path with integrity? Because the truth is, you can't outsource character. You can't fake inner strength. Discipline built on honor is unshakable because it's not driven by fear. It's driven by respect for yourself, your values, and the life you're building. So if you want to live like Musashi, live with honor, not because it's popular, but because it's right. Let's keep going. You're doing great. Principle 6, embrace simplicity. In a world full of noise, distractions, and endless options, this one hits hard. Musashi believed in simplicity, not just in the way he lived, but in how he thought, moved, and made decisions. And honestly, it might be the most underrated secret to discipline. Because here's the thing. The more complicated your life becomes, the harder it is to stay focused. The more stuff you have, physical, digital, emotional, the more energy it takes just to manage it all. Now imagine trying to be disciplined in that kind of chaos. Musashi stripped everything down to what mattered most. He lived with few possessions. He didn't chase luxury or appearance. He designed his life around his mission and cut out everything that got in the way. That's not just minimalism, that's strategic clarity. Let's bring it into today. Think about your phone. How many apps are pulling at your attention every hour? Notifications, messages, ads, videos, updates. They don't just take your time. They take your willpower. Every time you get distracted, you lose momentum. And when your mental energy is scattered, discipline feels impossible. Now let's say you want to improve your focus for work. You block out 2 hours, sit down at your desk, but your phone is buzzing. Your desktop has 15 tabs open, your to-do list is 3 pages long, and you're trying to do 5 things at once. Of course you get frustrated, of course you procrastinate. You're not lazy, you're overloaded. So what can you do? Simplify. Turn off notifications, delete apps you don't need, clear your workspace, choose one goal for the day, not 10. Cut down your commitments to the ones that actually move the needle. Discipline becomes a lot easier when you're not constantly drained by decision fatigue. Musashi understood that energy is a precious resource, and he protected his by living light, mentally and physically. He didn't need constant entertainment. He didn't chase 10 different ambitions at once. He focused on mastery, and he let go of the rest. Here's a simple challenge you can try. Pick one area of your life that feels cluttered. Your phone, your desk, your calendar, your morning routine. and ask yourself, what can I remove that's not truly serving me? You'll be amazed at how much clarity and energy return when you stop carrying things that don't belong. Because simplicity isn't boring, it's powerful. It frees up space for what matters, and in that space, discipline can breathe. So if you've been feeling scattered, distracted, stretched too thin, you don't need more willpower. You need less noise. That's what Musashi practiced, and it's what you can start practicing too. Simplify to sharpen. Let go to level up. That's principle 6, embrace simplicity. Because a focused life is a disciplined life. And now we've reached the final lesson in this journey of discipline. Principle 7, master yourself. At the heart of every great warrior, leader, creator, and human being, there is one essential power, self-mastery, and Musashi embodied it completely. To master yourself means to stay in control, not just when things are easy, but especially when things get hard. It means you don't let emotions, distractions, or outside noise dictate your actions. You become the one who decides. Musashi wasn't just fighting enemies on the battlefield, he was constantly fighting himself. His ego, his fear, his impulses. And he trained to win that battle every single day. Let's make this real for you. Have you ever had a moment where someone said something that triggered you? You wanted to snap back, prove your point, defend yourself, but afterward, you felt drained or ashamed. That's what happens when we lose control of ourselves. We act on impulse instead of intention. And every time that happens, we give away our power. Self-mastery flips that. It's the pause before the reaction. It's the decision to respond from strength, not weakness. Let's take a modern example. Imagine you're working on something important, maybe a creative project or a business idea. But halfway through, you hit resistance. It's not exciting anymore. It's frustrating. Your mind wants to escape. Maybe scroll TikTok, maybe grab snacks, maybe open a new tab just for a break. Now stop. In that moment, self-mastery is the voice that says, no, stay, finish what you started. Not because it feels good, but because it's who you are now. And that right there is the beginning of freedom. Musashi had no luxury to be ruled by moods or comfort. He lived in a time where losing focus could cost your life. So he developed a mindset where nothing, not fear, not anger, not even pain, could pull him off his path. That's what made him dangerous, not his sword, his inner stillness. And the same is true for you. If you can master yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your attention, there's almost nothing you can't achieve. Here are a few simple ways to practice this. Next time you feel the urge to react emotionally, pause. When your body wants to quit early, do one more rep. When the world gets noisy, go inward instead of outward. Because self-mastery isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. It's about choosing your response again and again until it becomes natural. And over time, the chaos around you will matter less, because the calm within you will grow stronger. That's how Musashi lived. And that's how you can live too. So write this down and repeat it often. I am the master of myself. My mind listens to me. That's principle 7, and maybe the most powerful of them all. Because once you master yourself, everything else becomes possible. So now you've walked through all 7 principles of discipline, inspired by the life and legacy of Miyamoto Musashi. Let's be honest, none of these principles are flashy. They're not trendy hacks or motivational cliches. They're timeless, uncomfortable truths. But if you live by them, they'll change everything. Discipline isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's not about forcing, grinding, or suffering your way through life. It's about building inner strength. It's about becoming the kind of person who does what they said they would, no matter the weather, no matter the mood. That's what Musashi taught us, and more importantly, that's what he lived. Through simplicity, focus, repetition, and honor, he became more than a swordsman. He became a symbol of mastery. And the truth is, you don't need to be a samurai to walk this path. You just need to start where you are. One small promise kept, one difficult thing done, One moment of self-control when you usually give in. That's how discipline begins, not in grand gestures, but in everyday choices. If this message spoke to you, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, reflecting, and opening yourself to growth. If you found value in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like. It helps others find this kind of content too. And if you want more videos like this, grounded, timeless, and real, consider subscribing. We explore philosophy, personal growth, and the kind of mindset that leads to quiet strength. And hey, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of Musashi's principles hit home for you the most? What are you going to apply starting today? Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay focused, stay grounded, and as always, walk your path with discipline.